Good evening, kings, queens, and in-betweens. I hope you're already sitting down, because this video is very likely to upset some folks, but is it really YouTube if you don't upset some people? Onto the intro. It is a consistent sin we humans make to forget the consequences of history. There's been just so much time, and no one of us can keep it all in our head at once. That's why I like going through the r/AskHistorian subreddit and look through the answers, because you'll find all sorts of sickos who've made it their life's work to drink deeply of the history of seemingly tiny parts of the past. And while this definitely makes them all nerds, I genuinely think that's a fascinating life path. And it's important they do so too, because without them, we will quickly forget the true facts of time and find ourselves guided by charlatans. And this is true in all aspects of our lives, the false narratives of war, politics, and shit that actually matters, like video games and anime. Would Call of Duty exist without Doom? Would fighting games exist without mentally ill women? Would Mario exist without legs? Our present day is a consequence of history, and when I take a break from making videos people actually want to watch, I often spend my time looking through media history to see the developments and evolutions of various tropes and franchises as they pass through time. But most people are neurotypical, and worse, there exists some out there who would crush and hide the artifacts of history to sell their new narrative for their own financial gain. And I know what you're thinking. Don't you mean literally every game company or political body in the world? And to that I say, well yes, but shut up, I have an axe to grind here. I am talking about the schemers and villains over at Naughty Dog, whose most beloved game is set to re-release on the PC any day now. They're hiding something from you, and I'm gonna blow those assholes wide open. Wait, that sounds bad. Can you cut that out? I'm gonna get to the bottom of this and show to the world that The Last of Us Part 2 Definitive Edition is more like The Last of Us Part 2 Derivative Edition, a copycat that stole fire from the hands of God. But first, let's discuss the defendant. The Last of Us Part 2 is a follow-up to one of the daddest games of all time and directly follows the consequences of that game's actions. In The Last of Us Part 1, Joel is given a choice between letting go of his surrogate daughter and letting her die for the decent chance that she will cure the brain mold which destroyed the world, or killing everyone horribly. Would it even be a good prestige video game if he chose the former? Leave a comment if you respect your daughter's autonomy. In making his decision though, he still, ironically, loses his daughter because Ellie doesn't believe his lies and their relationship is forever damaged. Jumping off of that, The Last of Us Part 2 plays the like daddy, like daughter card by making Ellie into a blood-crazed motherfucker, sometimes literally as Joel's past comes back to haunt him. The two's relationship had been terribly rocky in the space between the two games, but nothing brings those wasted years into clearer focus than seeing your dad get his head caved in. On that fateful day, Joel happens to run into the greatest golfer on this side of the apocalypse, and he was just the guy she wanted to meet. To celebrate a successful mission, she decided to wind down with a live demonstration for her friends and acquaintances.
Hole in one!
I'm telling you, man, with a swing like that, this woman had the chops. If she was born in the right place at the right time, she could have cleared the PGA Tour. Ellie isn't much impressed by the performance, however, and the next third of the game involves Ellie chasing after those figures that did this to her surrogate father. All the while, we are left to wonder, why did they do it? Who would hurt such a kindly, supportive father such as he? These thoughts chase through Ellie's mind, and our own as we shoot, stab, and explode random guards and passerby on our way to our true target. Who would do such a terrible thing to my daddy? This tension is core to the storytelling of The Last of Us Part 2, and is striking at one of the themes of this game. Empathy, or more accurately, the lack of us. That was stupid. The lack of it. Ellie tears out west, killing random goons and the golfers' compatriots alike, all in the hopes of finding that central figure that we know precious little about. But honestly, who cares who they are? They killed Joel, so they deserve to die, is the rationale. And all the people along the way, well, you know the saying. Eggs, eggs, omelet. But that's a lot of eggs, and it's not a great justification to begin with. That's why they call out the names of their mates when they're killed. It is drawing attention to your lack of empathy as you continue cutting a path towards the golfer. Morally speaking, the best thing for you to do as a player is turn the game off and return it to GameStop for store credit. Unless you bought it digital, in which case. But Druckmann is a crafty little freak, isn't he? At the turning point of the game, right when Ellie's mission is ready to be realized, our perspective shifts away from Ellie to the golfer, Abby. To her friends, her struggles, her relationship to her own daddy, and why she made that journey to show Joel what for. forcing the player to empathize with Joel's killer through controlling them, showing her relatively fulfilled life and prospects that she also threw away for revenge. A cycle of violence, of daughters and daddies killing each other in a loop, and the countless other people slain for their own selfish lust for blood. It's a really solid story structure, and it serves The Last of Us #2 well. But here's where it all comes crashing down for Naughty Dog. For you see, this excellent story structure didn't come from this studio. Naughty Dog's empathy-based storyline is only possible because Druckmann, and the other writers that never get talked about because we're so invested in Great Man Theory that we like to pretend that only one person makes games, stands on the shoulders of giants. And they would have you think they're perfect and clever writers, but they stole their story, and are now passing it off as their own. The Last of Us Part 2 is a fantastic, and perhaps even perfect video game narrative, because they stole from the coffers of the one true king, Sonic Adventure 2. Sonic Adventure 2 is the first appearance of Shadow the Hedgehog, undeniably one of the coolest characters to ever exist. Sonic but edgy, how has nobody come up with this yet? And yet, Shadow's intentions are shrouded in mystery as we play through the hero path. From the moment the hero story begins, we are on the back foot. As Sonic is taken into custody, Knuckles once again loses his Master Emerald, and Eggman blows a goddamn hole in the moon before we're even halfway through the plot. As our heroes fight to stop Eggman's newest schemes, Shadow basically doesn't matter. Sonic and Shadow fight once in the forest, where an untimely call on the egg phone reveals that they're working together, and then as the final fight. And that's it. Very fitting, given Sonic's character. Long as the voice inside drives me to run and fight, it doesn't matter who is wrong and who is right. Bit of a problematic moral code, but sure, it works for him, let's run with it. Sonic murks Shadow and saves the day without ever learning who he is. It is only through playing the Dark Story that you learn Shadow's tragic past. He had a human friend on the Space Colony arc, Maria, and she died at human hands, a conflict that severely damaged Shadow's faith in humanity. Now that he's free, he is on a one hedgehog mission to make those who hurt him and the ones he loved suffer, no matter who gets in the way, innocent or otherwise. He will stop at nothing to get his pound of flesh. Sound familiar? If there's one thing I have to give to Druckmann and Gross, it's how they innovated just a little by mixing up the light and dark stories. Though Abby fulfills the role of Shadow structurally, being the mysterious figure we spend the first half chasing, Ellie is much more aligned with Shadow's demeanor and motivations. The all-consuming revenge, the disregard for human life, and the cursing. Shadow's a character for kids, so I get why he doesn't curse more, but you know that guy would let out a fuck or two if Mr. Sega would let him. He's comfortable taking candy from a baby, guys. He is a bad guy. Like, he's a freak. He would say heinous slurs.
Disgusting black.
Sonic and company chase after their rivals, and though Sonic never learns Shadow's deal, you do. In playing both stories, you gain access to the last campaign, where the teams must work together for the greater good of the world, with Shadow learning Maria's true wish in the process. Shadow gives up on his misplaced revenge, saves the world, and dies. For 4 years, and then they make him say damn and give him a gun. Naughty Dog has Ellie chase her Shadow equivalent, but in the process, she becomes angrier and angrier, becoming a shadow of her former self. Man, that was a good line, and I just said that shit into a mic for free. Subscribe to my Patreon if you want to support bangers like that one. This perversion of Ellie's personality performs a similar role to Joel's characterization in The Last of Us 1. He's a very bad dude, but it's easy to lose track of that due to video games already being a fantastically violent medium, so you're desensitized to the horrors you're committing, and he's you. You see the game from his perspective, you see what drove him to make his decisions, so his actions make a sort of sense from the player's point of view. Plus, most people don't walk around thinking they're a bad person, and because you are Joel, that internal logic applies to him as well. Besides, are you telling me you wouldn't do the same for your daughter? Leave a comment if you would destroy humanity's last hope to save your daughter. Playing as Ellie this time around, you'd presumably empathize with what Ellie's going through and want to see those murderers pay. I mean, that's me. I don't want them to kill me. Look at what they're doing to my me. But in a shift from The Last of Us Part 1, Part 2 makes sure to pull attention towards the ghoulish behavior of Ellie and drive a wedge between the player and your avatar, especially with this sequence. Real talk, I'm honestly not sure why Naughty Dog was trying so hard to demonize Ellie here compared to Joel from the last game. Gamers already hate women, you didn't have to try so hard. Ellie becomes a monster over the course of her story, purely driven by a desire to kill. So when we switch to Abby, we see all the details Ellie smeared over in her revenge quest. The politics, the war between the wolves and the Seraphites, the life she's made for herself here. And over the course of this story, Abby finds something more to fight for than herself or her people. Thanks to her light murder retreat, and Lev of course, she was finally able to move on. But that's not exactly a fair comparison, is it? Abby is shown constantly bringing up Joel in flashbacks, and when she finally gets a lead on his whereabouts, she brushes up on her stroke game, takes a winding trip down to Jackson, and kills him. An eye for an eye. But actually pulling out someone's eye is a harrowing thing. The guilt weighs heavily on her and her friends. And what's worse, now Ellie wants an eye too. Joel committed a lot of wrongs. Over the course of this game, Ellie's going to commit a lot of her own wrongs. And Abby just dabbled in murder a bit, as a treat. But she pays dearly for it, because the full expression, if you haven't heard, is an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind. So I guess I'll give it to the Drux and Grosses over at Naughty Dog for that. Putting 2 shadows in your video game does make it pretty cool and awesome. It's so gritty, staring at it gives me a rug burn. But they steal the ending too! In the final act of this game, both of our heroes have to come together despite their differences to escape from a common enemy, the ruling economic class. Based. And then once they're in the clear, they hash out their differences like ladies over a drink of water. And here, our final flashback arrives to force character growth out of Ellie, a move not too dissimilar to what happens with Shadow in the final act of Sonic Adventure 2. Shadow had a false recalling of his final moments with Maria. Right before the end, Shadow remembers Maria asking him to be happy, to forgive humanity for what they had done to him that day, and to use his abilities to help the world. And Ellie remembers Joel, remembers their final night together, remembers wanting to forgive and forget the sins of the past. And in the spirit of that forgiveness, spares Abby's life. What a beautiful message. Rings a bit hollow though, both because Ellie realizes this too little too late and loses everything in her revenge quest, and because the game has been a pretty excited participant in wanton, needless bloodshed for the past 20 plus hours. You see, at the most basic level, violence requires a lapse of empathy in the moment it's committed. Most people don't like experiencing pain, shout out to the BDSM crowd, so in the moment when you commit harm on others, you are necessarily not considering what that harm is going to do to them. Perhaps thinking, this is for your own good. Who cares how they feel? They deserve this. Or, one of the worst justifications, they aren't even a person. This is a human-centric framing, but this extends to all other creatures, hell, even concepts or non-living things like infrastructure. To commit violence, you mustn't care how this harm will affect the victim. And I just wanted to step in here to say, because I know what I just said was pretty totalizing, I'm specifically speaking from the perspective of aggressor-based violence, not retaliatory or self-defense or, well, anything that a victim class would do against the aggressor class. Though Ellie is originally going on this mission because of an action that Abby committed and therefore she's a victim, most of the violence Ellie commits throughout this game is done on people who have nothing to do with that, therefore making her an aggressor. Most of the violence in this game is from this perspective for Ellie, so that's where I'm speaking from. And in a game like The Last of Us, where most violence is final in its consequences, that means Ellie rarely considers her victim's humanity. And if she does, it is much too late, and it doesn't stop her from committing further acts of violence either. So to specifically forgive Abby, here at the end, means all that blood in the water was for absolutely nothing. And though I don't think it makes for a satisfying ending, I do think that's the point of Part 2. Violence is often needless, perpetuated by systems driven by their dehumanizing language and the power of their own inertia, as is the case for the wolves and the Seraphites, or a purely personal and vindictive vendetta to make you feel better, at the detriment of everything else. This ending is the worst one the game could arrive at. It provides no catharsis for your journey, and the sun doesn't shine on a beautiful new day where Ellie learns to forgive and forget. After all, neither did Abby. And you know, maybe it's too much to ask someone to get over the murder of their father. I get that. But where did this cycle begin again? Oh, right. At Joel. Monsters begetting monsters begetting monsters. Sonic is a series about prevailing through hardship with the power of friendship and belief, and also running very fast. It's very shonen anime in that way. Sonic can make most people his friends by the end of the story, and that's no different in Sonic Adventure 2. The Last of Us Part 2 asks the question, what if both sides of this narrative had no stubborn, good-natured hero? What if this world had no Sonic? And the answer is predictable. It is a cold and lifeless world with no joy, good folks, or autism. It's a world where nothing good ever happens, where nearly everything must be lost before one person learns one thing about the nature of violence. So, next time you play your favorite game, make sure to take time and think about its influences. Think about how the arc of history created the games and mechanics that led to this perfect little game existing. Because sometimes there's some really cool things to find in that past. And also, it allows you to catch when someone's trying to make a quick buck on a false narrative. The Last of Us Part 2 would not exist without Sonic Adventure 2. It takes the upbeat and hopeful tone and its emotional core and saps it of all its color in the hopes of telling a story about the cyclical nature of violence. Or at least I think that's what it's about. I don't know, I haven't actually played the game. Hey, thanks for making it to the end and hopefully being a good sport about the whole thing. As a reward, let me tell you some of the silly behind-the-scenes stuff that happened while we were playing. We being, in this case, myself and Barista, a friend of mine who religiously plays this game on Grounded roughly once a year. And she is the friend I bring up in passing when I want to talk crap about The Last of Us. Anyway, we discovered that there are a couple of things in this game that cannot be shot at. Like, if you point your gun at it, the game will refuse to let you shoot your gun. And other than the obvious examples, like your friends or civilians, the game also doesn't let you shoot the Tora, which makes sense, and the PlayStation 3. So, in terms of importance to the Last of Us universe, these two are equal. Bear would also do a lot of dumb stuff while playing because she both knows the game like the back of her hand and was aware of where the cutscenes were, so she could behave as cinematically as possible for either dramatic or comedic effect, so I have to thank her for her efforts. Elsewise, I obviously have to thank you for making it to the end here. Even though this is an obvious shitpost, I hope you still found it entertaining and perhaps even a little bit informative in some respects, who knows. Lastly but not leastly, I have to thank my patrons, who have been hearing me whisper about this game for months and months. Well, now it's out, gang. Hopefully it was worth the wait. If you want to help make this YouTube thing I do more financially stable, or just want to throw $1 or $2 my way, consider subscribing, either on YouTube or on Patreon. Every little dollar counts, especially with the American government intentionally destroying the economy. Whoops, don't put that in the video! So every dollar helps. And when it isn't being used to put food on the table, it goes towards paying for video things, like better equipment. I'm finally saving up for that Shure mic that everyone seems to have. But that's the video. I am Super Dude, and I'll see ya whenever the next one is. Thanks, love you, bye!